Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for yet another Film Fanatic show. Hope everyone's doing good. It is Monday fun day at about 9:46. So, yeah, it's a pretty cold November day as expected. Pretty nice, kind of a sunny day. This weekend was pretty nice. It was it was cold, but it was pretty overcast. But it was pretty dry. Pretty nice weekend. Pretty busy weekend, so it was pretty fun. I had some rehearsals and some gigs and some things, and just doing the thing. So hope everyone's doing good. I I've been doing. This is actually going to be the second video in the series, even though I've done a few of his movies. But I decided to do a whole series of movies on the amazing Martin Scorsese. He's one of my all-time favorite directors. I find I find myself keep bringing up his name, even if it's obviously not directly related to him, but it's always it always his name always comes up. A lot of the times in these videos, I'll talk about you know it can be any genre of film or any kind of style or particular filmmaker. And a lot of the times I'll talk about certain directors that always you know where they they have this long career and there's a lot of great films under their name. They have this long real continuous path of just great work, and also which is more case is usually the case more often than not is where a director has a couple of movies that they might have been involved in or that they actually directed, spearheaded, and they're really, really good. But then after that, after the fact, they're, things are just not up to par, like compared to say their debut or their one-off movie that they did. And that's a weird thing. And but to find a director who can span whose work like Martin Scorsese, whose work spans decades, and when you look at his body of work, just the sheer amount of just how awesome the films are and the overall consistency is it's pretty rare to find that. And so Martin Scorsese's name's always that's something I think about a lot, and it's something that has come up a lot in a lot of these videos. So I decided, well, I should really. He's always been one of my favorite directors. So then that's when I decided a couple days ago or so that I should just do a series of all of his movies. The last director that I covered, who's my favorite director of all time, Stanley Kubrick, I did a series of videos where I covered all of his movies. There's one movie I didn't cover, which was I think The Killer's Kiss, and it's the only one I haven't seen. I know about that movie. I know actually a lot about it. I've heard a lot about it, but for some reason I've just never seen it, and I need to see it. And so that's the only one I didn't review. But with Scorsese, I've seen every one of his films. I just recently posted a review of Killers of the Flower Moon, his most recent film, which is just a masterpiece. So, and I was also thinking of a director or uh, a movie that I just saw recently from a director. Oh yeah, there was a. I just did a show recently on walks along, the girl who walks alone at night, which is a really really great kind of modern vampire movie, and that was directed by Amy Lily Poor, who is a really really great director. I mean, from that movie alone, just based on that movie alone, it's so well done, so well crafted. It's such an awesome movie. I actually think it's one of the best, kind of top tier vampire movies ever made. It's so original. It's just everything, every detail of that film. But with her career, like now she's still directing movies as far as I know. But she went on to become a pretty big producer, and she came out of the independent world. She more or less stays in the independent world, but she's got her own production company, and she's now, I kind of consider her, even though she's not like maybe not necessarily a household name, she's pretty close to it. She is a pretty big presence now in the film world. She has her own production company. She's pretty self sufficient, and she's distributed lots of movies, and she's got a lot of clout now, like kind of in the industry itself. But as a director, she's done a couple other movies since The Girl Who Walks Alone at Night, and not I'm not really big fans of her other films. I feel like without a doubt, you got to give props to that movie because it is so good. It's such a high level, um, kind of benchmark of a vampire movie in a lot of ways. But sometimes I think directors have this thing of where and this sounds a little bit crude, but I kind of feel like there's a lot of directors out there that put out a great movie, or I think of it as like they kind of get it all out of their system, or they shoot their first load, and everything after that first initial film that kind of establishes them, it's just not as good. It like lacks in some area where it's just not as consistent or strong, and I get a sense sometimes that directors like they'll have this one project and they'll pour, and you can tell that they pour every ounce of their being in the film, and then after that great film is released by them, it seems like everything after that just doesn't have that level of focus anymore. And I think, and again, these are just my opinions, but I kind of feel like she's an example of that. When I think of, Scorsese, it's like it's amazing, like how he can keep up this incredible longevity, and he just turned 80 years old, and he's still just a man on fire as far as I'm concerned. And I just recently watched an interview with him because Killers of the Flower Moon just came out. Amazing movie. I highly recommend it to anybody. It's pretty long. It is an undertaking to a degree, but still very, very much worth the experience. But I just, so he was doing lots of interviews for the movie and doing lots of, things all over online. And I've been watching some interviews with him, and, you know, it's amazing. It's pretty inspiring that he's still, got this passion and this drive. So, yeah, he's just amazing. But so I decided I'm going to do a series where I'm going to be covering all of the movies of one of my favorite directors of all time, Martin Scorsese. I before I started this series, there are obviously a few films of his that I have covered and that I've done videos on. I did a video on these. I think these were done last year, and it's been about a little over a year since I started this YouTube channel. I've actually had this YouTube channel for a while, for a couple of years, but I didn't really do anything with it, and it wasn't not this past summer, the summer before, I started to, pretty much a year ago, I started to slowly make that the focus of the whole, around Film Fanatic. And that's kind of what it is and what it has become, where that's the main focus, the main thing I do around Film Fanatic, around my Facebook page, my Film Fanatic Facebook page, and also my main at Film Fanatic Instagram page. And then I also use my own personal page on Facebook for these posts. So it's essentially like three different pages or whatnot, but the main focus has kind of over time changed a lot, and now the main thing that I do is, you know, all of these videos. But I still post on and try to keep everything else pretty active for the most part. But they're movies. So last year, I know I did a couple of reviews of some of his films, so they won't be included in this series per se because they're already out there. But I did a review on my favorite Scorsese movie of all time, and that is Mean Streets. I bought that last year on Blu-ray, and I did a show on that. And then I also did a show. Pretty sure I did a show on Taxi Driver, of course, which is essential. One of the most important films ever made, just in general. And I don't think I've done any other Scorsese films. Killers of the Flower Moon. So there's like a total of 3 films. I just did a show, and lately I've been doing a lot. I still do try to do a video every day, but lately what I've been doing is, so I don't want to like overwhelm people and just overly saturate things. What I've been doing is I still do videos every day for the most part. Every now and then I can't get to it, but usually I do them every day. What I've been doing with a lot of these videos lately is I've been setting them up as a premiere, so I'm setting them up in the future. I even have a couple that will be coming out next month. So that's been fun. I can just kind of do it, set it up, and set it up, and just put it out there. There's certain films that I'm just totally enamored by and just really into that, and those films I'll I'll do a post of that video the same day, and I'll do all of these promotions. I tend to do that more, obviously, when I'm doing coverage of anything in the horror exploitation world, because that's my favorite genre. So that that usually gets the most attention, or those films. So, but again, I love lots of different kinds of movies, so I'm always kind of, trying to add some new things. And so this is a new series. This is going to be a little bit different of a, I don't know, slightly different approach with this. There's not, these videos are not coming out in any particular order. I'm not really naming a particular order of films of Scorsese's that, like my top 10 or my top 20. That being said, I mentioned a second ago, my favorite Scorsese movie of all time, hands down, is Mean Streets. I just think that movie is a complete masterpiece. The thing about that film is so it's just got this gritty realism to it. It almost feels like a documentary. And I feel like even when Scorsese has done some very different kinds of films, all of his films have have a little bit of that edge that he had in Mean Streets. There's always something about it. Well, he'll go to certain places in other films, even if they're films, that are really big budget, say like The Aviator, for instance. But there's always this thing of where it still has, even if it's on a subtle level, there's always an element of where it's kind of gritty, and it still has. You could still see that this filmmaker, Martin Scorsese, is just, he's still got some balls, he's still got some grit, coming our way. So it's pretty amazing. But what I'm doing now is I'm kind of doing, and again, it's not any in any particular order. But what I'm kind of doing now is like there's a few films of in Scorsese's career where I feel like they're pretty underappreciated, and they didn't really get a lot of attention, and I don't think they get enough attention. There's about 3 films I would say in his career that are just really really good, but they're pretty under the radar. A lot of his other films, of course, have gotten tremendous acclaim, rightfully so. Especially like, well, Taxi Driver, that's probably the most well known. But Goodfellas is probably even higher, to a degree in that level, at that level. Casino, very popular movie also. So there's been a few films of his that were, really really talked about, especially when they came out, and have gotten all kinds of accolades and acclaim. But there are a few movies of his that I feel are pretty under the radar. The movie I'm going to be talking about today is a little bit of a different situation, and that is Shutter Island. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio. That movie, I feel, is the only movie that I'm aware of, and I kind of felt this way too in the beginning, but this is the only movie I feel by a lot of people is kind of considered to be kind of a failure by Scorsese, where it just missed the mark. It's not really that great. It's not as good as the other films. And I have to say, when I first saw this film, I kind of felt the same way. I kind of felt something was off with how the narrative was structured, and there were a few other variables around it where it felt like maybe Scorsese was trying something so different that he was out of his element, and it just wasn't connect. He just wasn't connecting the dots. But my views of this film have changed dramatically, and I've seen it about 3 times now. I saw it again a few years ago, and I was found myself really, actually, really enjoying this film. And then I just watched it again last night, and I just got it. I just got it on Blu-ray this past year, and I think this movie is pretty amazing. Like, I generally found myself totally lost in this film in a good way, and I think this movie is so great, and I think it's you know people can have their opinions, and that's fine, but I think this movie, and none of the I feel like none I can't think of any of the films in Scorsese's career, and I can't think of any film in his career that has been kind of beat up on, or kind of pegged as like not a great movie, and kind of crapped on by lots of people or critics. Uh, but Shutter Island is one of those movies. I think that movie has gotten abused and kind of to a degree ridiculed over the years. And I don't think it made a whole. I think it was a film that did not do so well in the box office. And this was also yet another film that Scorsese and DiCaprio starred or worked together. But this movie has grown on me, and I think it's a really, really great movie. So today's show is going to be on Shutter Island. The other films that I want to get to, and again, this isn't in any particular order, but the other films in Scorsese's career that I feel are really, really underappreciated, and to a degree, I don't think really anybody has ever seen them, and I think they're really great. There's a movie that came out a few years ago called Silence, and it's about these Jesuit priests that go on this kind of pilgrimage, and it's an incredible movie. I just saw it last year or the year before. It was one of those movies I'd heard about, and for whatever reason, I just never saw it. And I finally rented it, and I was just blown away by this movie. It's an incredible movie, and it's a movie that didn't do anything in the box office. It came, and I almost think it came out, was in theaters for maybe a really brief time, and then it just went direct to video. It just kind of disappeared, and nobody saw the movie. I kind of feel like it's the most under appreciated and probably the least talked about film of his career. And it's an amazing film. Like, it's really great. It's pretty dark. I've only seen it once, but I'm going to do a show on that at some point. The other movie of his that has gotten a little bit more acclaim, but really not, but at the end of the day, not really, which I think is easily one of his best movies, where I think this movie is just a complete masterpiece, is another film he did with Robert De Niro called The King of Comedy. That movie is just, I was blown away by how incredible that film is. And so I'm really looking forward to doing a show on that. I've only seen that movie one time. So I just watched that pretty recently for the first time, like earlier, probably about 5 or 6 months ago. And oh my God, I was just blown away by this film. So I'm going to be talking a lot about those two movies. I want to do reviews, and then of course get to the other films that I want to get to. The other film I did do a show on, which I don't think I said, but I did do a video last year on Raging Bull, starring De Niro. Again, I mean, what else can you say about that movie? So there's a few movies out there. There's a few movies that I've already done, but I'm gonna get to all of his films because he's I think such an important director, and he's I really feel like he's an American treasure. So again, today's show is on Shutter Island, and I picked up again. I saw this film. It came out in 2010. It's hard to believe. I just saw too today this morning that Leonardo DiCaprio just turned 49 years old. It's pretty amazing the career of that he's had and that he continues to have. I just think he is. I think of him as like in the class of like Brando or Scorsese. I mean, or De Niro or Pacino. Like when they were young. In their prime time, they were considered to be the greatest actors around. Just cut from a certain a different kind of a cloth. Dennis Hopper's another one. Um, I feel like actors like Marlon Brando, Dennis Hopper, James Dean, uh, you know, particular time for De Niro, and also Pacino. Um, and I think Gene Hackman, for instance, just actors they had so much power and command, for like at least a decade or if not more, where at that time in the height of their career they were the best actors around. And I feel like DiCaprio is is at that level. I think when you talk about those actors, he's one I feel that is obviously a modern day, a younger actor, but who he is one of, he is of that group. He is that he's that powerful of an actor. So again, Shutter Island came out in 2010. I saw it when it first came out. I got it on DVD, or actually, I didn't see it in the theater, but I remember it when it was in the theater, and then I saw it when it came out on DVD, and then I saw it one other time. I think. No, actually, I've only seen this movie three times. Now that I think of it, I saw it one time, and then was kind of always. It's funny. I definitely I had an odd experience around this movie. And then last year, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was last year. I came across this movie Shutter Island on Blu-ray, and it was really cheap. I was like, I don't know, $2 or something, and I got it at Goodwill, so I snagged it up because I was like, what the hell? I need to see this again. It had been years since I'd seen it, and I remember my first reaction to this film was really weird. I had a friend at the time who he was a big Scorsese film fan, and he had gone. I didn't see it in the theater, but he had gone to the theater to see Shutter Island because there was a lot of hype around it. I mean, it was coming after the heels of when DiCaprio and Scorsese were really igniting things on the screen, like they had done Gangs of New York, and there were some big films that they had already done, and I think The Aviator had come out before that, which was another big movie. So they had this already, like this big partnership going. So there was a lot of attraction and excitement about this new collaboration with DiCaprio and Scorsese. And for the most part, Scorsese has always done his films have always done very well commercially. There's exceptions, but for the most part, his films have always made pretty good money. And most of his films have always been, for the most part, embraced by the critics, as far as I know. And granted, it's when I think of the time when this came out in 2010 compared to where we are now in 2023, in some ways it's a different universe. Everything, the way people see movies, the way people hear about movies. I mean, I really think it is. So it's hard. It's a very different time. But I remember I had a friend at the time who had gone to see Shutter Island in the theater, and he saw it actually at the Colonial Theater in Belfast, which has actually been closed for a couple of years, but they're going to be reopening, so that's pretty exciting. I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with that place. He saw Shutter Island and he hated it. He totally. I remember seeing him or so, seeing him like the day after or something like that. That he had gone to see it, and he just trashed it. And he said it was one of the worst movies he's ever seen at that time, and he thought it was just like just this like cash grab movie that Scorsese did, meaning that he just made this like totally generic, paint by numbers, big Hollywood kind of suspense, somewhat of a horror film kind of a thing. And he said it was just like ridiculous and asinine. And he just totally trashed it. And I remember being, because I remember seeing a trailer for Shutter Island, and I remember being, wow, like this looks really good. And it looks so different from anything has done. And it felt like you were watching a horror film. And the only other film that Scorsese's done that has kind of been a horror film, which I definitely consider to be a horror film, is his remake of Cape Fear with Robert De Niro, who plays Robert Mitchum's character. And that movie, and Jessica Lange is in it, Nick Nolte. That movie is just amazing. And that movie is like Robert De Niro in that film is truly terrifying. And I definitely, even though it's a suspense movie and it's a kind of a drama to a degree, I definitely feel like that movie's a horror movie. It's scary. I mean, De Niro is legitimately terrifying in that movie, and so I was really surprised and excited by the trailer for Shutter Island because here Scorsese was kind of moving back into that territory of doing more of a horror film. So I was intrigued. But then, so I heard bad things about the film, and I remember it didn't get a lot of good acclaim. It didn't do very well in the box office, and this is going back quite a few years, but it didn't do very well in the box office. It was penned pretty hard by a lot of critics and people, and I kind of was losing my steam to see it, even though I needed to see it anyway and make up my own mind. So I finally saw it after it had come out, and I had really mixed things about it. I was like on the fence about it. I didn't know if I even really liked it that much. There were certain things about it I thought were really great. I thought DiCaprio, as always, was pretty incredible. Mark Ruffalo is in this movie. Max von Sydow and Ben Kingsley. I mean, it's got an amazing cast. And there were certain things about this film that I thought were really cool. I thought visually there were some really interesting things. But I thought that this movie was, to a degree, like such a change for Scorsese. And I kind of felt, he was, I think, definitely doing something really different. But I kind of felt like maybe he kind of bit off more than he could chew, or it was like I kind of felt like he was a fish out of water. Meaning that this film is definitely a suspense kind of based film, but it definitely has horror elements. It's actually very gory too, but it definitely has horror elements. And I kind of felt like, maybe he just wasn't familiar enough with how that genre works, and was trying to have elements from that genre in the film, but then it just did not connect with everything else that was going on. And I just had mixed things about it. And so I saw it once, and I was like, it's not bad, it's not terrible. I don't think it was as bad as I had heard it was, as I had heard that it was. But I thought it was okay, but I didn't think it was nowhere near as good as his other films. And then so fast forward many, many years later to like present time, I came across this on Blu-ray, and I was like, it was super cheap. I'd only seen it on DVD. I'd only seen it once. I was like, screw it, why not? I picked it up, and I watched it the other night, and I had a completely different experience around it. I thought this movie was awesome. Really great, really great. The cinematography for this film is pretty breathtaking. There are these like sequences that are kind of like dream sequences that are just so amazing and so beautifully done, and the use of the music, the score for this film is pretty incredible. And I actually thought the horror elements in this film were almost were stronger than I remember it being when I first saw it. I enjoyed it even more. And I felt the other thing about this film, of course, DiCaprio was amazing in it. I enjoyed the cast a lot more. I thought the story was really great. Um, I thought the ending was really interesting. It kind of went into an area that I did not think it would. And I thought it was funny when I put it in. I thought, okay, I remember how this ends. There is this like ending, but then I started thinking, well, okay, now that I had seen this film once, I can see how, I can see all the clues, and it's gonna be this ending. Like for me when I first started watching it on Blu-ray the other night, I started thinking, well, it's pretty obvious now what the ending is, because it has this like trick ending, and I was like, well, maybe that's, not the best. So especially if you're a fan of watching movies again, like I am. So, but then when it got towards the end, the climactic ending, which is almost anticlimactic, but in a good way, it was uh, very different than what I remember it being, and it was not what the ending. The endings, the outcome was. I was wrong, and I was surprised all over again, and I thought that was great, and I found myself really enjoying this movie, and I think it's really great, and I think it's so many great movies that he's done, but I think DiCaprio's role in this is really, really great. I think this film does a great balance of, like a murder mystery, a suspense, a detective story. It has elements of film noir. It has definitely has elements of the horror genre. And also, I love that it's a period piece, and it deals a lot with this main character played by DiCaprio, who is like dealing with these like horrible, horrible, events, and how it kind of weighs on his psyche and how it affects him. And it does this really great thing. If you're not really sure if this is in this dream like reality or these things are really happening, and even within those perimeters, it still gives you surprises. It's great, and this Blu-ray edition is pretty spectacular. The transfer is amazing. The quality is just awesome. I recently got a newer system, which is a little bit more pared down, but I actually really like it. When I first got it, I wasn't so terribly excited, and basically it's all centered to where it's like essentially one speaker, but it has this like omnidirectional effect, and I actually think it's kick ass, and now I actually really love it, and I almost love it more than my other system. There's a little bit more richness to it and a little bit more depth of clarity that I hear. It's really interesting because it's all coming at you, but yet it's coming around you at the same time. Um, yeah, I'm really excited, and I still use my other system, but now that's just used for a just a stereo system. So I use that to listen to music. So I actually have a much better setup now. But watching this really high quality Blu-ray on my new system was very impressive. I was really, really excited, and it's a great movie. So, I highly recommend anybody out there, if you're a DiCaprio fan or especially a Scorsese fan, and if you didn't like this movie when you first saw it or whatnot, give it a chance again. It's a really good movie, and it's got a real. I love. It's definitely got a Hitchcock vibe to it. The score very much has a Bernard Herrmann element, but it's a great movie. I really enjoyed this. So, um, that happens sometimes with certain films. I think for all of us and for me, where initially you are just enamored with a film, or you're just blown away by a film, or you're just really into it. And then sometimes it's the reverse, where you're like, nah, I don't know. And sometimes it takes that extra time to kind of sit with it or to experience it. And sometimes it grows on you big time. And so I think this is one of those films. So definitely check it out. So stay tuned for the next Scorsese movie coming your way in another day or so. Have a great day. Peace.